Okay, um, moving right along. Again, this is an overview of the book, The Psychology Quality of Life. My name is Joseph Sergi again, and I'm a professor at Virginia Tech. And what we're doing is we're providing an overview of some of the highlights in the book, which is called again The Psychology Quality of Life: Hedonic Well-Being, Life Satisfaction, and Eudaimonia. This is this is published. This is the second edition published by Springer. Um, and so far, again, we finished talking about philosophical foundations and definitions and measures. We also talked about the consequences of happiness, and we're in the midst of in that part of the book discussing objective reality and its effects on happiness. And in that context, we talked about the economic effects on happiness, political effects, sociocultural effects, effects of demographics, effects of personal activities. And now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the latter, so the effects of the environment, the genetics, health, and drugs and other biological factors. And we sort of lump those in one module. So this is what we're going to be doing right now. Okay, well, let's start out with genetics. Um, Much of the research in quality of life and well-being uh, have sort of demonstrated, and I would say unequivocally, that 50% of the variance in constructs related to happiness, subjective well-being, life satisfaction, hedonic well-being, and that kind of thing, uh, are can be accounted for by genetics. So the genetics component seems to be very dominant in accounting for again the kind of variance in personal happiness. Um, uh, so again, this is very important because when we usually talk about a set point, people have different set points when it comes to happiness, and whatever happens in life, they tend to go back to their set points um, uh, after uh, after a short time. So let's say if there is a negative life event, such as maybe a divorce or a death in the family, people become depressed as a function of that life event, but they sort of bounce back to their set point, which is genetically determined. Now, some of the recent research on genetics, trying to link genetics with happiness or happiness constructs, have indicated that there's a short allele variant of the serotonin transporter, which is designated as 5-HTT, and that one is associated with depression. And conversely, the long allele variant is associated with resilience, and that is people tend to bounce back from adverse life events. Um, so again, that that is indicative that genetics does play a major role in subjective well-being. Okay, well, let's move on to talking about the health factors and how health affects subjective well-being. And one meta-analysis study, and a meta-analysis study is, of course, is a study of many studies where it kind of summarizes much of the research in that area, kind of captured, you know, uh, the effect size of the relationship between health and happiness. And that one is 0.32 correlation, which is that effect size between self-reported health and happiness, meaning that again there is a moderate correlation between self-reported happiness and self-reported health and happiness. But the relationship is not bidirectional in the sense that uh, one thing leads to another in its reciprocal manner. Uh, that poor health, the relationship that has been established is that poor health, both physical and mental health, plays a significant and negative role in happiness. That means when people become sick or disabled or they have mental health problems, that really takes a toll on their personal happiness. And that's what the researchers say. Okay, moving right along to examine the research dealing with biological and physical factors and how these affect constructs related to happiness. We have research dealing with sleep, physical exercise, obesity and body weight, eating disorders, diurnal preference. Let's talk about those. Okay, the research on sleep shows very clearly that people who have poor sleeping habits, that takes a toll on subjective well-being. So they tend to report lower levels of subjective well-being than those people who have sufficient sleep. Um, Again, that's what the researchers say. Physical exercise, well, higher levels of exercise associated with positive mood. For those people who exercise, they tend to feel a little bit better. Again, there's a positive mood inducement that comes from physical exercise, and that has been demonstrated, by much research. How about obesity and body weight? Well, the relationship is a little bit, well, I wouldn't say controversial. There is a relationship, and apparently it is mediated by body image. So for those people uh, um, who are obese or have body weight problems, um, if they perceive that their obesity or body weight problem um, reflects poorly on their body image, and their body image is salient in their minds, then ultimately that plays an adverse role on subjective well-being. On the other hand, if uh, if that doesn't affect much of their body image, then it does not affect subjective well-being. So again, the mediation of body image is central to understanding the relationship between obesity, body weight, and subjective well-being. How about eating disorders? There's all kinds of eating disorders, and much of the research have demonstrated that there is an association there between eating disorders and happiness, especially among children and youth. Uh, and that is, of course, a negative relationship. Those children and adolescents who exhibit a certain amount of eating disorders, they tend to report lower levels of subjective well-being. Diurnal preference talks about whether people tend to be morning people or evening people. Morning people are essentially people that wake up early in the morning and they conduct their daily lives. Um, uh, and you got the evening people are those people that like to um, sleep late, very late in the morning, and they function better during the evenings. Some of the research is very suggestive of the notion that morningness is associated with life satisfaction than eveningness. So that's kind of very interesting. How about the physical environment? Again, research has shown that uh, Mood is affected by seasonal variation. In other words, people's moods become gloomy in colder than warmer seasons. So in the winter time, in the midst of the winter, um, the people tend to again have gloomy moods. But when it comes to spring and summer, they again their mood is much more positive. So that's what the research is indicating in terms of the physical environment. The last topic here is drugs and substance abuse. Well, we can categorize much of the research in that area in terms of what you call triggering positive emotions, inhibiting negative emotions, and triggering negative emotions. Um, so when it comes to triggering positive emotions,
Hold on, sweetie. Can you walk the dog in a few minutes? Joe, I gotta run. Can you walk the dog in a few minutes? Just hit stop and you edit it out.
okay, excuse me for that interruption. Um, Again, we're looking at the effects of drugs and substance abuse. And again, we're dividing much of the research in terms of three major categories: triggering positive emotions, inhibiting negative emotions, and triggering negative emotions. Okay, the research shows very clearly that when it comes to subjective well-being, or more specifically, I think if we're talking about something at the micro level, where we're looking at hedonic well-being, there are certain neurotransmitters and receptors associated with norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin, and cannabinoid, and oxytocin. These are the neurotransmitters and receptors that are associated with um, what you call triggering positive emotions. Now, the drugs that are associated with those neurotransmitters and receptors um, are cocaine and marijuana. Cocaine, how does it work? It prevents neurons from communicating with one another, hence prevents pain signals from traveling through, and it produces euphoria by blocking the reuptake of dopamine and norepinephrine as well as serotonin. When it comes to marijuana, the drug THC binds the endogenous cannabinoid neurotransmitter system. That's how it works. Okay, looking at the inhibiting negative emotions, we're looking at neurotransmitters and receptors that are associated with the GABA, uh, with, with the GABA system, and endorphins, and the endorphins. Um, and when it comes to the drugs, alcohol, barbiturates, and opiates are very much associated um, with this process of inhibiting negative emotions. So alcohol serves as an anxiety reducing drug by enhancing the GABA system. Essentially it numbs pain. Barbiturates barbiturate works like alcohol in the same manner. And opiates like morphine, codeine, heroin, um, what it what what these do is they reduce anxiety and pain. Okay, well, the last dimension related to drugs and substance abuse is triggering negative emotions. Of course, that is something that you don't want to do, but it happens. It happens every time when a person or an organism, for that matter, is exposed to a threat, an environmental threat. The response is a fight or flight response. It essentially it acts as a stress signal that mobilizes the individual to fight or fight. And the underlying hormone associated with that is cortisol, essentially, which is secreted by the adrenaline gland. So again, it's adrenaline in one way. So it is very useful from an evolutionary perspective because, again, if the individual or the organism is threatened, um, you know, uh, that particular hormone serves to help the individual survive. But from the perspective of subjective well-being, I think what we're really interested in is the chronic conditions associated with the triggering of cortisol or adrenaline. When you have when you have conditions in which the individual is constantly secreting cortisol, um, then that leads to depression. Uh, and and of course, when it comes to treating depression, some of the antidepressant drugs, at least the one that are more popular in the United States, are Cymbalta, which is a duloxetine, which is essentially a technical name for it. Of course, you've got Prozac, and the technical name for that is fluoxet, fluoxetine, and Zoloft, which is sertraline, if I'm pronouncing those right. Okay, well that allows us. I mean, that concludes our module on the effects of genetics, health, biology, environment, and drugs on happiness.